Welcome to hell, Scott.
I could make so many comments to that, Mark. You have no idea.
So we are here to talk about easily the heaviest game we've discussed on the podcast thus far. This is a review. This is sponsored by Grand Gamers Guild. They very generously provided us a copy of Inferno.
Dun, dun, dun.
Now, I love...
Dante's Inferno.
The Divine Comedy is excellent.
So good.
And, I mean, yes, it's essentially, political hit piece fan fiction from the era, but I don't really care it's lasted this long because it's great.
Yeah.
So when this originally came out on Kickstarter, I was very, very excited for it. We were provided a retail copy, and when we looked at the differences between the two, there's not a ton. There's some minis instead of standees and metal coins instead of cardboard, but generally speaking, it's the same game. And we wanted to talk about this. So normally, when we do our gameplay overview, we try to give as much of a complete teach as possible. That is not going to be the case here because the teach on this game is
extensive,
significant. So do not take what we are about to say here as a how to learn and how to play the game, but here's a high-level overview of what all you're doing in your turn. Thematically, you are absolutely horrible people.
Excuse you?
No.
Oh, yeah, we're bad.
There is no getting around it.
No. When we sit there and say we're horrible people, you are horrible people.
So you are playing the representative of an Italian family who your goal is to find sinners across Florence and then accuse them of various sins, damn them to hell, and then drag them down to the circle they belong in. When you examine this game thematically at all, you are horrible people.
Yeah.
But good night, is there a lot going on in this. So your turn is, generally speaking, broken just into two halves. That's it.
Yeah, very simple.
The first is the hell phase. You are going to move a soul further down into hell. Where you go is incredibly important, as well as the color of the meeple that you're moving is very important, because there are technically 9 colors of meeples, even though the pagans for the limbo circle, there's only like 2 of them. Mm-hmm. But it's important because if you're moving somebody from the graveyard to hell, you have to pay a drachmae to Kara. I will say I have been playing an enormous amount of Assassin's Creed Odyssey over the past
so he's
going to
be saying things differently.
I am also learning Greek at the moment.
Oh.
So it's why I am saying drachmae, because that's the way it's pronounced, all the things. My accent may not be great. Anyways, so...
But we digress.
So you are going to pay a drachmae to the boatmen to get them into hell, or if they are already there, then you just move them down the line. Now, each circle, at the top it is the widest, and it narrows down to the bottom, because the bottom is, of course, where the worst souls are, and therefore there's not as many spaces to go. Where you move is very dependent on where you have come into the Inferno at, as well as if there are any other meeples or guardians in the way. Because the icon that the soul you move lands on tells you one of the 2 locations you are allowed to take an action at on the next half of your turn. Very importantly, nobody owns the souls. So even though I brought it in across the river, Scott, you can move it all the way down into the Ring of Gluttony, whatever. When a soul moves, they are never allowed to go lower than the circle they belong to. So a glutton cannot go below the 3rd ring. But otherwise, you are going to move them according to however much stuff is there and where they're allowed to go. And if you get them to their ring, you're going to score some bonus points. But generally speaking, your turn is entirely determined by what you do here. Which soul you move and where it ends up is incredibly important, because there are 4 symbols, and they are a stag, a boat's wheel, keys, and what we were referring to as the rotunda. It could be a dome, whatever you want to call it. We just call it the rotunda, because in the next step of your turn on the Florence phase, you are either going to move a family member from your house to one of the locations at the symbol that you are allowed to go to, or you are going to accuse a sinner where a family member already is. Very importantly, you are not ever able to move a person in and then accuse from that space. They are two very distinct actions. There is a third action that can come up called the Family Council, where if you are not able to do one of those two actions, you're going to lose some points and you're going to lose some stuff for it. It doesn't come up often. You really do not want it to come up because this is an incredibly heavy economic game where the drachmae and the florins are tight. And so every decision you make is very, very weighted. Now, when you go to one of the locations, these locations are set out randomly during setup, and there are two types of locations at each of these symbols. There's what's called the free access location, where anybody can go to them. They are square locations, and you are just simply going to put your family member there and do what it says. So you could add a level to your tower, you could grab an urchin off the streets, whatever. Or if you have the appropriate entry needs, you can go to one of these special locations, and that's either paying money or you have to enter with a very specific family member. So once you have decided where you're going to go between them, generally speaking, you are going to be resolving whatever happens at that location. If you choose to accuse a sinner, however, that is a very big deal. It's going to happen infrequently, but everybody at the table is going to take notice when it happens because a lot more occurs on an accusation turn than a standard move a family member, do a thing turn. Because the accusations, if you are at the free access locations, doesn't matter who's doing it, you can just be there and accuse. The special locations, you will actually have needed to invite a visitor into your tower, and then you can only accuse if you have that visitor and if there is a space in the tower adjacent to that visitor that you can send that family member to. There's a lot of consideration and effort that goes into making an accusation. The important thing about making an accusation amongst everything else is that when you are looking at souls to move in the hell phase, there is a deck of cards that shows 4 souls that are going to be put in when the cemetery empties. And when the cemetery empties, 4 new ones go in, and it won't refill until it empties out. When you accuse, you get to very specifically pick the type of soul that is going to go into the graveyard. You have to be at the location matching their color, but if you need a soul to go all the way down to the treachery circle, so long as you are accusing from the ice blue space, there you go. You've just put an ice blue soul into the graveyard. And you are going to keep doing that across an indeterminate number of rounds, where you're going to move a soul in hell, then you will take your action up in Florence. You may accuse, you may just move and grab some resources, whatever. Go until the game ends. The game ends once Dante, who is walking along the side of the board, essentially he is acting as your guide through the Inferno, as he does in the poem. When he reaches the bottom, that is when the game ends. The person who moved him there scores some bonus points and some other stuff happens. All the other players get one more turn and the game ends. This is a long game. Even with 2 players, you're looking at 2 hours easy. When we played it 3 players, it was really about an hour per player.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. There are many things I did not talk about in this. So before we start talking about all that, though, let's talk learning curve. How did it feel to learn the game, and then how did it feel to play the game for you?
So learning the game, and especially when you are looking at the board after you are explaining certain actions, was a lot. Not even going to lie. It was a lot. However, once you started going, and once you started taking your actions, and once you started watching everyone else take your actions, it was relatively easy, in all honesty. Those first couple rounds, you're going to be like, how does this work exactly? Okay, I have to pay my drachmae so I can get the soul across. Okay, I'm landed here. Okay, so I could do one of those 2 actions. So then I definitely suggest that people be looking at what actions that they want to take beforehand, so that while you're looking, you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to take this soul, I'm going to go here, and this is what we're doing. Because there's a lot.
There's
a lot.
When we're looking at this from an ease of teach aspect, because once more, I'm the one that taught it, this rulebook is phenomenal.
Yeah,
I'm very, very pleased with this rule.
Yeah, you were very confident. Like, we've played enough games, we've done enough reviews that you were just as confident teaching this, and it was a brand new game, as you would be to teach me Finspan.
Yep. The rulebook is exquisitely laid out. It has very clear examples, and there is an easy understanding of how should I approach this game, what should I be doing. And when I approach a game like this, I have a very specific process that I learn the rules with. And anybody that will be watching me reading this, like, why is he flipping this rulebook so freaking much? Because being able to read a concept and then look at the board as it is shown in the setup pages and then understand, oh, these are the components they're talking about. It's my process. And so it took me about 2 hours to read this rulebook, but it was in there and I had no issues.
Yeah.
I found the ease of play to be very straightforward because I was the one that read the rules and learned it, and I had played it solo so that way I knew what I was doing when I came into the teach. Mm-hmm. But the actual mechanisms of move a soul, place your guy, take one of the two actions, there's a lot of knock-on effect from every decision you make, but the actual structure of it is so straightforward. You have this incredible player aid in front of you that is a small 4-page booklet. And when you sit there, like 4 pages, the first page is just, here's your turn structure, here's everything very well laid out. Then the next one, here's what all the locations do. The next one, at the end of the game, these are all the scoring conditions, and this is the order they happen in. And then the last one is just a quick reference for all the icons that appear on the fraud cards, which I didn't even mention in the overview, but are very important for the game. The information that is presented here, the iconography, and I guess we're just kind of blending these categories together now, is extremely strong. We found that the colors and the symbology within the souls themselves is very clear and very understandable.
Oh, yeah.
But our friend who does have color vision issues did really struggle with this, especially as the game went on. And part of that is the weight of the game. And part of that was the weight of the game compounded by all these color muddling for him.
Yes.
He still did very well when we played it with him, but I totally get why he struggled. That said, I have such few issues with the art and the presentation here. Like, my biggest one is that the symbols for what matches on the souls where it's printed on the board is very faded and it's off to one side. The board is huge.
This is a massive board, y'all. Yeah. Like,
you're going to want to turn this board side.
Yeah, you're going to want to turn this board sideways. It's going to eat up a lot of table space. Like you said, it is very impressive that the Souls for Sloth have a cloud because you're sleeping, and that's Hypnos, and that's a symbol of Hypnos. And gluttony being what it is, and just treacheries and the knife. And
yeah. And the board itself, for being as large as it is, doesn't waste any real estate because in the one corner down there, it's, oh, you're accusing somebody, here are the steps. So if you don't have your player aid right on you, here's where it is. On the other side, if you want to pay Charon to take a different action than where you landed, there's that reminder. Like, everything on this board is needed. It makes it very playable. It just means that the size and amount of this game, you're not playing this on a small table.
No, you're not going to play this on a small table.
You need more than a card table, for sure.
Yeah, very much so. And then, heck, we didn't even talk about the Guardians.
Oh, yeah, man. I've completely skipped over those.
I mean, just so you know, we have these Guardians. So, besides having souls that you're moving down, you have 2 Guardians that are sitting here in the underworld. And there's a specific spot that they start in, but they can go anywhere on the board. And depending on what Guardians you have, depends on what they do. Like the Medusa. When the Medusa moved, would literally turn a soul to stone, which then kept that space blocked. And then the soul went back to where it could eventually be reused.
But the tactical response to that is, okay, so I'm going to use that soul that is heresy. And I'm not, oh, Medusa just got rid of it. The heresy soul's not there anymore. Oh, crap.
Yeah.
Every decision in this.
Yeah.
Every decision has ramifications and complications, and it affects everybody at the table.
So brilliant. And the fact that there's so many Guardians.
And what's cool with the Guardians is they come in 2 types. There's the Black Guardians and the Red Guardians, and you just pick one of each. It does suggest in your first game, just pick, I believe, one of the Black Guardians. Look, if you're playing this game, play with both.
Yeah.
The added complexity is just going to enrich the game. And if that's what's putting you over, you're not going to be approaching this game anyway.
No.
Now, when it comes to the iconography, I think it is mostly strong.
Yes. I think there is some weakness.
There are a couple of symbols that are used only a couple times, and so you'll be referring to your player aid a lot for those. When you're looking at the symbol for moving the cubes for the Phlegathon track versus moving the Guardian. If you know the thematic story of why they are what they are, yes, the centaurs are around Phlegathon. That's why that's that symbol. Why the Guardians are a werewolf? Don't really have a good answer for that.
Is there even a werewolf monster?
No.
Okay.
The image kind of looks like a minotaur mixed with I don't know. It's one of the only symbols that I think is understandable for people to screw up. It's a weird symbol.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's all pretty straightforward. If you see the coin bag with the bottom cut open, you know that's a frog card. You know, if you see the gate with a orange circle on it, that's the wall of discs that you need to put a disc on. There's more than enough symbology in this game that is so clear that having just those couple of little wait, which one is this, is fine, because not only do you have the incredible player aid, but they made the decision that I'm going to sit here and toot horns for. There's a full player aid on the back of the rule book that is just all the iconography in the game.
Yeah.
It also has the credits on there, but you know what? The information that could be there is presented in your player aid. So there is more than enough ways to get to all the information.
I do appreciate on a totally different level that you have to put discs on the wall of discs. And it's just like,
we all kept saying, it's the wall of discs.
Yep.
Every time.
Yeah. It's a phenomenal game.
The production on this really is top tier. I cannot speak highly enough about this rulebook, because if this were even an inch worse, this would have made this so much harder to interact with.
Oh, yeah.
It's great.
It needed that rulebook. The artwork is so amazing.
And the interpretation of everybody across the board, of Minos and the Minotaur and Geryon, it is vibrant and it is strong. And we didn't mention this at the top the way we should have. The designer of this is Fernando Eduardo Sanchez, and the art is David Benzal and Cristian Casado Otazu. Their work all together of blending those mechanisms with that theme, with that art, is just impeccable. Mm-hmm. Absolutely impeccable here. This is the only component thing that I think actually the deluxe might have an edge on, and that is that the Guardians, instead of being standees in the retail, are miniatures in the deluxe box. And that's the only kind of usability thing that we had across our gameplays, is that however the Guardians get placed, if they get turned or whatever, it can be hard to remember which one is where. Mm-hmm. Especially when you get into the later parts of the game and you have souls everywhere. There are 71 souls in this box, and we routinely use 50 to 60 of them. Now, there are certain games where we use less. We'll get into that in our next section. But that usability of the minis, of actually having them stand out and be more clear who they are, that actually I think is an edge to the deluxe. But what is there? I mean, again, you just reach over and you turn it. It's not like, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing. It's a small thing, but that is the difference. You are more than fine with the retail version of this box.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's get into our more subjective stuff. What did you like about it?
I liked its complexity, because I think it was the right amount of complexity. You had to think. You could, sometimes in between turns, it's very easy for me to slip over to my phone or get distracted by something else. This one was just enough of I need to pay attention, to make sure that I knew what I wanted to do on my following turn. Mm-hmm. Now, that didn't mean that sometimes there was turns, even when it got back to me, I still didn't know what the heck I wanted to do, but there were those possibilities. I love the mechanism of you skip over souls. Like if there's souls in line, boom, you skip over them. When a soul gets to the ring it's supposed to get to, it lays down because it's in its spot, and that's how you score points that way. Like there's so many ways to score points in this game.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I do like the fact that the rulebook does actually sit there and say, okay, you are going to get a third of your points from this, and you're going to get another third of your points from this. And so just in the teaching say, so this is the stuff you really want to focus on, because the rulebook said it, and across multiple gameplays it panned out of, this is what you need to focus on. One of the things I really, really like about the game is just how much variability there is, and how much player choice and agency there is across everything based on how you want to play. Maybe you only want to send out one family member and keep accusing. Maybe you want to keep pushing that. Maybe you want to keep dragging souls all the way down to the bottom. Just the way the locations themselves can lay out and the way they interact with each other, that's going to change the game drastically. The combination of the Guardians you have in play can change a game drastically, because if you have Minos, yeah, I'm going to score points for that soul. If you laid it down and you're in the ring that I put my tail on, great. Or it's the Minotaur, where I have an entrance where if the soul enters here, it pops out wherever the Minotaur is. And that only works for me. So I have a shortcut that nobody else has. There's so much agency with how you play this game. Now, that means that it could be longer or shorter depending on how players play. You're going to develop a very strong meta across the course of the game, but for as much option as you have, it feels needed and earned across everything. And because the way the locations all interact with each other, it means that each gameplay feels fresh. And it's very interesting.
It's wild how the replay value is of this, because depending on where the buildings are, depends on what your two actions are going to be. You know, if we were sitting there talking about if these combo of building, we would have been fighting to get that one certain location. We would have been trying to get the keys all the time if they were happen to be on keys. It is amazing to see that much complexity, that much replayability in something as big as this is.
When you normally play a game of this intensity, it does feel like they can get more scripted, and this does not feel that way.
No.
Because do I want to go for diplomas? Maybe it's worth me not getting a diploma at this particular level, because during endgame scoring, if there aren't any souls there, I'm not going to get anything.
Yeah.
There's just so many ways to interact with the game. Now, what would somebody dislike? What would you warn them away from? Because I definitely have a few things in this category.
Well, I definitely think if a person has an issue with the theme, I mean, theming can be a thing that makes or breaks a game. And this is definitely a harder topic, because you are talking about medieval times. You are being a horrible person and essentially condemning people to die.
Yeah.
That is rough. Length of time, because this is a heavy game. This is going to take some time. This is going to take a good chunk of your afternoon or evening. That's entirely possible. There's a lot of little fiddly parts. You might have a problem with all the little fiddly parts, because sometimes, even as many games as I've played, sometimes I forget little bits of the fiddly parts. But I would really suggest you try it.
Yeah. So my big flag warning, hey, here we are type things here. So first, I love solo modes in games.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before, especially of games of this weight. I actually use solo modes to learn the game, and I'm able to teach from that. I found that was the case, because there actually are two solo modes. You have just play the game and then play it under scenarios, which is cool. But what I found is the solo mode was it was my least favorite way to play this game, because I didn't have enough time between my turns. And that's something that is not normally something that I say, but because there are so many decisions and so many paths and so many reactions to take, that having the other player's turns to sit there and take in the board state, and even looking at what you may have done, but having that ability to say, okay, this is what I need to do in my turn. So that way, like you said, there may be turns that even through everybody else's, I'm looking at it and I'm still trying to figure this out. On the whole, I need that time, as it turns out, in this game from turn to turn. I didn't have that in the solo. And so I found myself making a move and then sitting for 10 minutes trying to figure out, okay, if I do this and then this is it was crazy to me. So attached in with that, there can be a lot of AP. And there are many, many moments with this where you have planned your turn perfectly, and then you look at your tower and you realize, I can't make the accusation I just did because I don't have a guy sitting there, which means I have to undo my turn. It is a very, very tight economic game where if you don't have the florins or you don't have the drachmae and you didn't go the space to do the conversion, I ended up losing something like 25 points to Charon because I had to keep taking loans. Now, I ended up winning the game by a pretty significant amount the first time, but that structure of, I need money. I don't have the money. And then you can freeze, you can lock up. There is a lot of possibility for AP. And then there's a ton to set up. There's a ton to tear down. This board is insanely long. Yeah, you can play with mixing up the ring bonuses because there are components for that in there. It's great. There is so much going on.
Yeah.
And remembering that one space that you've only gone to once because you've only gotten a barrel, but that's the gray space, which means that's the violence ring. So if I need to accuse somebody, I have to go there. And if I don't have the gray guest, oh, I can't do it. Or, oh, I have a barrel next to him for whatever reason.
Or you don't get an orphan.
There's just so much. And this is one that I'm just going to make my recommendation with this. And I will say, if you like Vital Lacerda, if you like that weight, if you like that complexity, you will like what is here. If you like the Gallerist, I think there is a 1-to-1 comparison for gameplay style for that. You only really have 4 places to move, but you have 2 possible options to happen there. If you like that, you will like this. Otherwise, stay away.
Yeah.
You need to want to be in for a big, heavy game across the table. I think it was great at 2. I think 3 is actually the best player count because while 4 has a little bit of extra, it gets long, like aggressively long. I can recommend this very strong.
Oh, yeah.
For me, this is an 8. This is still a shelf. This will stay on my shelf, but I also know that this is going to live in that very small group in my collection that is the extremely heavy Euro game that don't come out very often. But I feel like even after having some time away from playing it, I can look at the board and I can remember what all's there. And because the play rate is so good, I can bring myself back up to speed with this much quicker than I would in some other heavy Euro games. It's not going to come out a lot. It's not going to come out with all the people. But in the right situation, I will be ecstatic to put this back on the table.
Yeah, this game is a solid 7 for me, even with all of everything, because there is a lot. I mean, you're building a tower, you're trying to get urchins, you're trying to accuse. Just for the sheer fact of, you only do 2 things. You take a soul, you move them down, and then you do the town action to what you match. It's thinky. Mm-hmm. It's a lot. But yeah, it's definitely a very glorious 7 for me.
Well, on that, thanks so much, guys. And we hope you check out Inferno. It's one that we very, very solidly recommend.